Well,
The other thing is, what's that?
I am so sorry, Your Honor. You can finish. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
Uh,
off. That's so difficult. That's take into consideration if the ticket can be waived because I am a responsible, good driver.
and you're still here just saying nobody gave you a break, right?
No, you're misunderstanding me because I'm not aware of breaks and tickets. This is my first one, so I hope you understand that I
Okay.
don't know that that is a break.
As Karen walked into court acting like she could charm her way out of a ticket. But the flirting routine wasn't working on the judge. What makes it worse? She completely clueless about how lucky she already got. That the officer clocked her going way faster, but gave her a break and only rode her for up to 6 to 10 over. That's basically a gift in traffic court. But instead off taking the win, she's here whining about how unfair it all is. I mean, she's stalking like she doesn't get any breaks when in reality the officer just saved her a pile of cash and points on her license. Let me know what we watch here. Are you guys heading out with this Karen or with Joju showing way more patience than I would? Let's dive in and watch.
This is a speeding citation on an actual 88 and a 70. However, it was only written as 6 to 10 over. So, Ms. Aguilar, you are here on this 6 to 10 over speeder to do one of three things. First is you could admit responsibility to the citation. Or two, admit responsibility, but you'd like to provide some sort of explanation to court as to how or why this happened. Or three, you wish to contest this citation. In other words, fight the ticket at what we call informal hearing. What were you looking to do?
Number two.
Okay. And what is it you'd like to tell me?
Your Honor, I'd like to explain what happened that day when I received the citation. I was in the left lane passing a slower moving vehicle, and I did increase my speed briefly in order to pass and merge back into the right lane. But I was not driving recklessly. I was pulled over shortly after by the officer who was originally traveling the opposite direction and made a U-turn on that highway. Given the circumstance and nearby traffic, I'm not even sure the speed he clocked was mine. I thought I was pulled over because at the time I did not have my license plate attached to the back. It was in my front seat. So I was not aware of getting pulled over for speed. I just thought it was my car needing the identification. During the stop, the officer did conduct the conduction or the interaction made me uncomfortable. He questioned several times about alcohol and drugs, despite there being no evidence. He kept pressuring that, so that kind of made me like really scared. He did peer through my windows of the car. The car is brand new. So there's really nothing there. I've never been in trouble before. I have a really good driving record. I do take driving seriously. I lost my brother to a reckless driver. I'm just asking the court to just please take the circumstances into consideration when reviewing the citation.
Okay. Well, ma'am, if you contested the citation, I would hear evidence and decide whether or not you were responsible or not. You're admitting responsibility to the citation, so I can't change the nature of your ticket. Now, lots of times what people, when they come in here, what they're concerned about is getting points on their license. Do you know what I mean
Mhm.
by that? Is
Yes,
that what you're concerned about?
I'm concerned about the points and the amount. I'm just concerned about it all, Your Honor. This is
Uh,
my first ticket I'm trying to fight.
Well, first of all, the officer didn't write you a ticket for going 88 and a 70. The trooper gave you a break and wrote you the second wimpiest ticket he could write you. I think this is only a 1 point ticket. But here's what I'll explain to you about points. I'm not going to give you points on this. The trooper didn't give you points on this. Points don't come from us. All right, that fines and costs is the only penalty. Now, points come from Secretary of State. Secretary of State court, two different animals. They can't tell me what to do. I can't tell them what to do.
Okay.
But here's what I would say about points. First of all, points die a natural death every 2 years. So if you want to, just outweigh this point and it will go away after 2 years. But maybe more to the point, if this is what concerns you, is there's a way for you to get rid of that point. But all I can do is explain to you how to do it for yourself. I can't do it for you. But are you curious?
I am curious. I'm also curious to know if I don't know, like I'm trying, this is my first time. I'm not sure if I'm doing this
Uh huh.
right. trying to fight it. I'm just agreeing with the officer. I honestly don't even remember that day how much speed I went because, like I said, he was traveling opposite and there was multiple
Yeah.
cars and he was behind
Well,
another
here's
car.
here's a couple of things I would tell you. First of all, we do not mind people coming in here and essentially saying, "Look, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to see what happens, and this is what I want." The first thing first is, when you're telling me that I thought I got pulled over for no plate, that doesn't make a lot of sense because the trooper, if he's coming at you the opposite way, he wouldn't know you didn't have a plate on the back of your car. So to spin around on you and pull you over is probably for a moving violation.
Well,
The other thing is, what's that?
I am so sorry, Your Honor. You can finish. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
The other thing is most of the people don't realize just how far away that they're getting radared by that. So in other words, it would be the opposite direction radar in the front of the trooper's vehicle. Yes, you likely got radared when you were passing someone, and that's why it was 88. I will tell you this, though. The actual law is you still can only go up to the speed limit to pass somebody. That's how slow somebody's supposed to be going for you to pass them. You were allowed to go up to 70 to pass, but passing is not an exception to the speeding rule. You still only can go the speed limit. But like I said, if you don't remember how fast you're going, the trooper's testimony would have been, of course, that his radar said 88 and that he checked his radar. So if you had had a hearing, I likely would have found you responsible. But here we are sort of on the back end.
I do have a question. If we're able to pull the footage of that day, because the officer did say his camera was on. And when I was passing the car, he wasn't behind me like right away. It was a few miles down the road and then he went behind me. So that's why I thought it was my license, not the
I
speed.
will let the trooper correct me, but when they say that, the camera comes on when they turn on lights and sirens. So it wouldn't have been on coming at you when it caught you speeding, and then he looped around on you, and then if to pull you over, he put his lights on. That's the camera footage he'd have, not of the speeding incident.
Can he pull that's so difficult. That's since there is no proof and he said I was going 88 and I'm just agreeing to it. What do I do, Your Honor?
You can understand why someone might want to challenge a traffic ticket, but this approach is a textbook example of how not to do it. From the very beginning, her combative attitude seemed to work against her more than the actual violation itself. Instead of presenting her case calmly, she came across as dismissive and irritated, which immediately put her at a disadvantage. What stood out even more was the judge's demeanor. He remained patient, respectful, and calm, showing far more courtesy than most people would expect in a courtroom setting. Ironically, that politeness only highlighted her behavior further, making her constant complaining seem even more out of place. Many would agree this is a type of judge most people would be grateful to face, yet she kept testing his limits as though it were some kind of contest. Then came the moment that really undercut her defense. She admitted she didn't even know how fast she was driving. That's practically an open acknowledgement of carelessness. It's one thing to argue over a speed reading, but it's another to confess you weren't paying attention at all. And let's not forget, the officer had already given her a generous break by recording a lower speed than what she was actually traveling. In reality, she walked into court with a deal that many drivers would have gladly accepted at this stage. Pressing the issue further doesn't just seem pointless, it's risky. By pushing harder, she could very well end up with a harsher penalty than the one she started with. Judges don't appreciate having their time wasted, especially over matters that are already close to being warnings in disguise. What's striking here is that her energy doesn't seem to be about fairness or accountability. Instead, it feels more like a determination to win the argument no matter what, even when the facts aren't in her favor. It's a pattern we've seen before, arguing endlessly in hopes of wearing down the other side rather than addressing the reality of the situation. The question becomes, should the judge cut things short and put an end to this back and forth? Or should he keep letting her talk, knowing she may only dig herself deeper into trouble with every word?
Well, you could fight the ticket, but like I said, I know what his testimony is going to be, and your testimony is going to be, I really don't know how fast I was going. So
But
there's not much.
You just said he
What's
didn't
that?
have. You just said that there was the radar doesn't. He can't prove that that radar was my car when he
No,
was trying.
ma'am, that's sort of a misunderstanding. Proof
Okay.
comes in many different forms, right? Now,
Yes.
if he had video footage, right, that would be one type of proof. But his testimony is in fact proof because he would be under oath and he would testify as to your speed. That is proof.
And for mine, can I be under oath and testify?
You would be under oath as well, but your proof would be, I really don't know how fast I was going. I just don't think I was going that fast. Which one of those two proofs sounds more firm and that I would go with at the end of the day?
Well, I would go with mine because the officer was really traveling the opposite direction. And I know I'm a safe driver. That's why I said I don't know. And that's why I was so confused when he pulled me over, was because
Ma'am, would you like to have a hearing?
If that's possible, yeah, I think I would.
All right. So, Trooper, if you would go ahead and raise your right hand.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Aguilar, go ahead and raise your right hand.
I apologize about the video as well. I'm having connectivity issues.
That's all right, as long as I can hear you. You swear or affirm any testimony you give here today would be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I would like to get proof. I feel like I should see the video to testify for the proof.
To see the enormous amount of evidence that he just testified to is the proof, just so we're clear.
Yeah, he said that he was clocking south, but I saw him while traveling before passing. He was moving and making a U-turn. He wasn't sitting still. He wasn't. That's why I'm really confident that there was other passing vehicles. And he said that he's confident that the radar did read, and that's not technically proof. Like, he's just verbally saying confident. And then he was behind a different car before.
No, ma'am. I'm gonna sort of crawl through this because if there was somebody else behind you, we wouldn't do this. But I want you to leave here understanding what happened.
Okay.
So what he testified to is he's literally just sitting there with his radar on, right? So to make sure that the radar works correctly, in the beginning of his shift, his radar has to check against a separately calibrated speedometer in his vehicle and come up with the same reading. If it doesn't, he can't use the radar all day. Then he uses the radar all day, and he does that check at the end of the shift too. And if it's not working at the end of the shift against his separately calibrated speedometer, he would just void all the tickets that he wrote.
Right.
So the first thing he said is visually he sees your car, right? Now we would let back in the old days, you'd let officers or troopers guess at speeds because this is what they do all day and they're pretty good at guessing speed. But we don't let them say how fast you're going. But we do let them testify that they think this automobile is traveling above the speed limit of 70 miles an hour, which he did. Okay. Then what he did is get you with his radar, right? So he knows that you're the car in the radar because it tones out. In other words, it makes an audible tone. And the audible tone changes in pitch depending on how fast it goes. So he also knows if that tone doesn't match the number he's seeing, something's wrong. Okay. And then once your car is out of the cone of his radar, the tone stops. That's how he knows it's sort of your car. Then he sort of flipped around on you and pulled you over. So he actually has testified 3 different ways that you are traveling well above the speed limit of 70. And what you're telling me is, I don't know how fast I'm going, but I just don't think I was going that fast. Now I have to pick one of those sets of evidence, right? Either your evidence, which is your testimony, or his evidence, which is his testimony. And I don't have to find beyond a reasonable doubt. You've heard that before, right? Because this isn't a crime. The standard for this, because it's a civil infraction, is you likely did it, 51%. So when I weigh all his evidence and testimony versus essentially the lack of evidence and testimony on your behalf, of course I would find it is more likely than not that you were actually speeding. You were actually going faster than the ticket you were written, but you were at least going 6 to 10 over. And that's why I would find you responsible. If you're searching for more than that, or that doesn't feel like a sufficient explanation to you, I don't know what else I can do for you, ma'am. That's how this works all day, every day.
I understand, Your Honor. Is it possible confirmation from his radar to make sure that it was working accurately that day for me?
Well,
She simply isn't grasping the reality of the situation, and that's what makes this case so frustrating to follow. The ticket itself is minimal, the fine is small, and the penalty points are barely significant. Realistically, this entire matter could have been settled in just a few minutes. Instead, she's turning it into a drawn-out performance that's costing her more time and effort than the ticket ever would have. If the concern were truly financial, dragging a lawyer into mix would be far more expensive than simply paying the fine and moving on. Yet, she remains fixed on the belief that she's entitled to even more leniency than what's already been extended. This is where the sense of entitlement really begins to show, not a fight for justice, but a refusal to accept accountability. Her next angle is a classic claim. The radar must have been wrong. But modern radar technology is highly reliable. Even when an officer's vehicle is in motion, courts across the country have consistently ruled that unless a radar unit was improperly calibrated, its readings are valid evidence. In this particular case, the argument collapses even further because the officer had already reduced the recorded speed on paper. That's essentially like receiving a generous discount at the checkout counter and still insisting the coupon you brought should be honored, even though you've already been given a bigger break. At some point, it stops being about fact or fairness and starts being about pride. The judge can clearly see this too. The longer she continues down this path, the more obvious it becomes that the issue is less about the law and more about her attitude. And in court, that type of attitude often ends up costing more than the original fine, as it raises a larger question. Do people in situations like this genuinely believe the excuses they present, or is it simply about arguing for the sake of arguing?
I could have him testify to that, but we're going to wrap things up here. Every, I think, 90 days or so, a tier 3 operator checks the radars, and then every 120 days, a tier 4 operator checks all the radars in the car. And if there's any problem with any of the radars, they take those out of order. And there is some sort of maintenance logbook that the state police keep for that. You probably could subpoena those records or ask at a formal hearing that somebody would bring those records in. But at informal hearing, I would not expect the trooper to be familiar with those records at this state and time. Just know that there is, in fact, a method of continuously checking these radars that if there are problems, they're taken out of circulation so that they're in circulation is sort of the prima facie evidence that against that set of checks, they are working.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want you to know that I wasn't driving recklessly. I was just passing. I do apologize.
Reckless driving is actually a crime. There is a whole charge for reckless driving. That's not what you have. You just have a charge of speeding, like lots of people do.
Take into consideration if the ticket can be waived because I am a responsible, good driver.
And ma'am, here's the problem, right? If what we did was judge everybody who gets a ticket on whether or not they're a good driver or not, that would be incredibly unfair. So bad drivers are just automatically responsible for their tickets because they did it in the past, or good drivers couldn't possibly be speeding because they've never got a speeding ticket before. That's sort of not, I mean, it's scary that that would be how the legal system works, right? I would judge this circumstance just on this circumstance, this time frame, and the facts that are presented before me, which is exactly what we did. Now, as far as getting a break, you did get a break. You got a break on the side of the road where this trooper decided to write you a ticket that's a third less than what he could have written you for, right?
What could he have written me? I don't know what he could have written me for because...
Well, ma'am, if you're going 88 in a 70, how many miles over the speed limit is that? 18 miles, right?
Well, that's what he's saying, and I was agreeing. So obviously I have to own up to that.
No,
so,
ma'am,
yeah.
even if you, no, we stopped doing that. I didn't take it that you agreed. We had a hearing, and I found clearly that you were going 18 miles over the speed limit. He did not write you a ticket for that because that's a 15 to 20 over. That's not what you're here on. That's not what I just found you guilty on. I found you guilty on a 6 to 10. He could have written you a 10 to 15, and you would have been responsible on that. He could have wrote you a 6 to 10. He could have wrote you a 1 to 5. He not only gave you a break 1 down, he gave you a break 2 tickets down. And you're still here just saying nobody gave you a break, right?
No, you're misunderstanding me because I'm not aware of breaks and tickets. This is my first one. So I hope you understand that I don't know that that is a break. But thank you for informing me about that. I'm here to
Yes.
fight it because I was just speeding to pass a car. That's it. That's all, Your Honor. And that's the break that I was looking to get. If I'm accused of speeding, I apologize. I was just passing a car in the left lane and got back over. He then was traveling behind a different car, turned his lights on, then came to me, and then I pulled over. Like I
Oh, yeah,
said,
and it takes a while for him to catch up to you, right? Because you're going
he didn't take a
70
while.
something miles an hour and he's going no miles an hour. He has to turn around and come after you. Takes
He
a
was
while. But one more thing, Miss Aguilar, because you had a contested hearing, you now do have a right to go to what's called formal hearing. Formal hearing is in front of the district court judges with the prosecutor's office. But to go to formal hearing, you must do two things. One is you must ask for that within 7 days of today's date. Your window of opportunity to contest this further closes after 7 days. And two, you must come in and post a cash bond in the same amount as the fine to guarantee your appearance at formal hearing. Do you understand your rights on appeal?
Yes, I do.
All right. Then we're all set for what we need to do here today. I'm going to go ahead and release parties. Thank you.
Oh, here's the real takeaway. Patience from a judge is admirable, but entitlement never carries weight where facts and law are concerned. The bigger question for viewers is this. Should the judge have issued a stronger penalty to drive a lesson home, or was his calm approach already the best possible response?